Hello everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Pulp Crazy. I'm your host, Jason Aiken. In this week's episode, I will be discussing Honorary Pulp Characters. These are characters who are often referred to as pulp, and have been kind of adopted by some of the pulp community. Now I should say, the opinions in this episode are solely my own, and based on my own logic. I'm not speaking for the pulp community as a whole. This is just one fan's opinion. During the course of writing this episode, I even found out that one of these characters is in fact a true pulp character, if I apply my own logic to the situation. I make sure to give this particular character props. I should also point out that while I am a pulp magazine fan, I am more of a reader than a collector. I read a lot of pulp stories, pulp-influenced comics, comic strips, and I watch a lot of film that all have a pulp influence. So that just gives you an idea of where I'm coming from. So how do I define a pulp character? Well, my method is pretty simple. Any character who has appeared in an actual pulp magazine. I know that's pretty strict, but in my opinion the word pulp is thrown around far too broadly these days. Part of it's due to marketing and promotion, and part of it is due to Tarantino's movie. It seems that lately characters and stories can be labeled as pulp when they only have the thinnest of connections to the classic pulp magazines of yesteryear. But like I said, some portions of pulp fandom have embraced some of these characters, and they have kind of become honorary pulp characters in that regard, even without them appearing between the rough wood pulp pages of the magazines. In this episode, I explain why the following characters are sometimes considered honorary pulp characters, and why some pulp fans embrace them as such. I give some basic info about each of them as well. Now, I don't get very in-depth, I just give a broad overview and my impressions on each particular character. I chose to just focus on American characters, as tackling the German and French characters, who were referred to as pulp characters, could be a whole other episode in itself. And I'm not really knowledgeable about either set. I also just chose a handful of characters for this episode. There are more that can be called honorary pulp characters. Some of the others that come to mind are King Kong, Hellboy, and Will Eisner's The Spirit. None of these characters actually appeared in pulp magazines, so by my definition, they're not really pulp characters, but I've sometimes heard them referred to as such, although not to the degree as the ones I've included in this episode. Well, here's the list, in no particular order. I hope you enjoy. Honey West. Honey West is a skilled private eye and sometimes secret agent. Due to Moonstone Books, Honey West has experienced a sort of revival in recent years. While she is perhaps best known for starring in her own TV series from 1965 to 1966, she first appeared in prose format. Honey West was created by the husband and wife team of Gloria and Forrest Fickling, under the pseudonym G.G. Fickling. The pair produced 11 novels featuring the character that were published from 1957 to 1972. There was also one short story published in 1965 that appeared in Mike Shane Mystery Magazine. In 1966, Gold Key published the Honey West one-shot issue, but she is mostly associated with Moonstone today. In recent years, Moonstone has published new prose stories and comics featuring Honey West, going as far to have published an all-new novella where Honey crosses over with T.H.E. Cat. The novella was written by Win Scott Eckert and Matthew Baugh. Perhaps it's Moonstone's close association with classic pulp that has caused Honey to be identified as a pulp character. But she never appeared in a pulp magazine, as Mike Shane Mystery Magazine wasn't a pulp. However, given her look, occupations, and skill sets, she fits into the pulp mold quite well. Captain Midnite. Captain Midnite is a pilot, adventurer, and secret agent. He was also the leader of the Secret Squadron. He first appeared on the radio in 1938. The Captain Midnite radio show was the creation of two radio writers, Wilfred G. Moore and Robert M. Burt. The radio show ran until 1949. Captain Midnite and his radio show were extremely popular, leading to the character appearing in other media. He got his own movie serial in 1942. Dell published a comic book in 1941. Then Fawcett published his adventures from 1942 through 1948 in the comics. He got his own comic strip in 1942 that lasted into the late 1940s. He also got a TV show, which ran on CBS from 1954 to 1956. In 2010, Moonstone published a Captain Midnite comic book story in their Air Fighters Comics title. Moonstone also published a prose anthology that year, titled The Captain Midnite Chronicles. Dark Horse Comics reintroduced the character in 2012, and his comic series is continuing today. Even though Captain Midnite was around in the 30s and 40s, he never appeared in a pulp magazine. I believe it's the time period and his various talents that allow him to be considered a pulp character so easily. Not to mention the look that he has. FuManchu. FuManchu was created by Sax Rohmer. He originally appeared in novels written by Rohmer from 1913 to 1959. He has appeared in authorized continuations written by K. Van Ash and currently William Patrick Maynard. Although he is not the origin or prototype for the Yellow Peril archetype, he had a great influence on it, and he has many pulp literary descendants. FuManchu is incredibly popular, having appeared on the radio, in film, on television, in comics, in comic strips, and he even has songs dedicated to him. Now, thanks to some research by Richard Paul Hall on the Old Pulp Facebook group, I feel I have to remove FuManchu from this Honorary Pulp Characters list. As it turns out, a FuManchu tale was reprinted in a pulp magazine. I knew Rohmer's FuManchu stories were reprinted and serialized in slick magazines, like Collier's, but I wasn't sure if he appeared in any actual pulp magazines. Richard looked at the Fiction Mag's index and found that a FuManchu story by Rohmer, titled The Golden Scorpion, was serialized in the January through May 1919 issues of Munsey's magazine. So, with this information, FuManchu can safely be called a pulp character using my logic. Thanks to Richard Paul Hall for the info on this. I appreciate it. Miss Fury. Miss Fury has recently come to the attention of pulp fandom, and is starting to become associated with being a pulp character, by fans who were into the comic book side of things. She originally debuted under the name of the Black Fury in a Sunday comic strip created by Tarpey Mills back in 1941. Her name was changed to Miss Fury, and her strip ran until 1942. She's a female vigilante that dresses in a skin-tight black catsuit to fight crime. She has no superpowers. I'm not sure if the Miss Fury or Black Fury character is in the public domain, but it appears 3 different publishers have used her: Malibu, Marvel, and now Dynamite. She appeared in other comic books later on during the 1990s from Malibu Comics. These include her own miniseries, published by Malibu's Adventure Comics imprint, as well as the Protectors series. She also had a cameo in 2008 in The 12, published by Marvel Comics. In 2013, Dynamite Entertainment began publishing a new Miss Fury comic. The Dynamite titles that she appears in are Masks, her own title, her own web-exclusive series, and Noir. The feedback of this version of Miss Fury at Dynamite seems to be largely positive, and really drummed up some interest in the character. Given Dynamite's association with classic pulp characters, that is probably leading people to associate Miss Fury with the pulps, even though she never appeared in a pulp magazine. She definitely has the look and the abilities of a pulp hero, though. The Rocketeer. When talking about pulp comic book characters, you can't go without mentioning the Rocketeer, created by writer and artist Dave Stevens. The Rocketeer is Cliff Secord, a stunt pilot who comes into the possession of an experimental rocket pack. He becomes the Rocketeer and gets mixed up in some very pulpy adventures. Dave Stevens was heavily inspired by the Commando Cody film serials when creating the Rocketeer. Sadly, Dave Stevens passed away in 2008, but his masterpiece will live on forever. The Rocketeer first appeared in comic books in 1982, and had a very scattered publishing history. The character was published by a few independent comic companies, with Stevens' last work on the character being published in 1995. Thankfully, you don't have to track down these single issues anymore, because IDW publishes them in a nice collection. IDW is also publishing new Rocketeer comics, and they just put out a prose anthology this year as well, called The Rocketeer Jetpack Adventures. The character also starred in a Disney movie back in 1991 that is fondly remembered today by fans. While the Rocketeer comics are set during the pulp era and feature cameos by thinly disguised pulp heroes, the Rocketeer isn't really a pulp character. However, there is no doubt the spirit of the pulp magazines are present within Dave Stevens' masterpiece. He really captures the feel of the late 1930s within the pages of the Rocketeer comics. The Rocketeer is a once-in-a-lifetime creation. The Phantom. The Phantom was created by Lee Falk and first appeared in his own comic strip in 1936. Now it's 2014, and his strip is still running. The Phantom is a generational hero, with the mantle of the Phantom passing down from father to son throughout the Walker family line. The Phantom is the protector of the fictional African nation of Bengala. The Phantom that most people know is Kit Walker. The character is very popular, having appeared in film serials, comics, novels, cartoons, and live-action television. Surprisingly, it appears he never had a radio show. He also didn't appear in a pulp magazine, but he did have some prose appearances. Big Little Books published 6 Phantom books from 1936 to 1947. Whitman Publishing put out a novel in 1944. Avon published 15 paperbacks from 1972 to 1975. A novelization of the 1996 film was also released. In more recent times, Moonstone published 2 prose anthologies titled The Phantom Chronicles, and they also published Phantom comic books. Dynamite Entertainment published Phantom comics after Moonstone, and it looks like they are going to publish some alternate form of the Phantom in the coming months. This new Dynamite Phantom is not a member of the Walker clan. He's Mandrake the Magician's sidekick as the Phantom. Hermes Press is currently publishing a 4-issue Phantom miniseries that looks to be really in the spirit of the original Phantom comic strip. From my understanding, the Phantom has an even bigger following overseas than compared to the US. I heard this is especially the case in Australia, but I haven't really looked into it too much. In the US, I believe he's probably best known for the 1996 film starring Billy Zane and the Phantom 2040 cartoon. Even though he never appeared in a pulp magazine, the Phantom's look, the time period he was created in, and his association with Moonstone and Dynamite have made him synonymous with pulp. The Green Hornet and Kato. The Green Hornet and Kato first appeared on the radio in 1936. They were created by Fran Stryker and George W. Trendle. James Joel is credited with some input in their creation as well. Britt Reed is the Green Hornet, newspaperman by day and vigilante by night. His chauffeur and sidekick, Kato, joins him. While the radio show lasted until 1952, the characters are probably best known for their 1966 to 1967 television series. This television series starred Van Williams as the Green Hornet and Bruce Lee as Kato. Besides radio and television, the characters have appeared in film serials, film, comic books, and prose. The Green Hornet's past prose adventures appear to be Big Little Books and television series tie-ins. However, he has recently appeared in prose fiction again, thanks to the 3 Green Hornet anthologies published by Moonstone Books. As far as comic books, the late 1980s and early 1990s Now comic series, spearheaded by writer Ron Fortier, is generally regarded in fandom as the best portrayal of the characters in the comics medium, and perhaps even the best portrayal of the characters, period. The characters have also had a comic book revival at Dynamite Entertainment. Dynamite published handfuls of Green Hornet comics that cover various versions and eras of the character. Some people might not know this, but the Green Hornet, Britt Reed, is actually the great-nephew of John Reed, the Lone Ranger. The Green Hornet's dad was the Lone Ranger's nephew, Dan Reed Jr. The Lone Ranger's brother was Dan Reed Sr. While the Green Hornet's great-uncle had a pulp magazine, the Green Hornet did not. As the Green Hornet never appeared in a pulp magazine, the Green Hornet isn't really a pulp character, but you can make the case that he is grandnephewed in, thanks to the Lone Ranger. It also doesn't hurt that the Green Hornet and Kato would be right at home on a pulp magazine cover. Their look just screams pulp to me. Well, that's it for this week's episode. I hope you enjoyed hearing about these honorary pulp characters. And I'm sorry if I missed anyone. If you have suggestions of your own, drop me a line at the following places. Pulp Crazy is located at pulpcrazy.com. I'm at Pulp Crazy on Twitter and facebook.com/pulpcrazy. My YouTube channel is youtube.com/pulpcast. You can also email me at pulpcrazy@gmail.com. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.